Building a healthy relationship can feel especially challenging for someone with an avoidant attachment style. They naturally value independence, emotional control, and personal space, often more than closeness itself. Because of this, relationships can sometimes feel overwhelming, draining, or even restrictive to them. They may enjoy connection in small doses, but when it starts to deepen, it can trigger a strong urge to step back. However, having an avoidant mindset does not mean they are incapable of love or long term connection. In fact, avoidance can form deep, meaningful, and stable relationships, but it requires awareness, patience, and intentional effort. The difference is that their growth often happens more consciously rather than automatically. The first and most important step is recognizing their own patterns. Avoidants often pull away when things start to feel emotionally intense. This reaction usually happens quickly and sometimes without much thought. One moment they feel connected, and the next moment they feel the need for distance. But when they start becoming aware of this pattern, everything begins to shift. Instead of reacting automatically, they can pause and observe what's happening inside them. They can ask themselves, why do I feel the need to withdraw right now? Or, is this situation actually unsafe or just unfamiliar? This level of self awareness is powerful because it creates a gap between feeling and action. In that gap, they have a choice to either follow the old pattern or try something new. Another important part of this process is understanding where these patterns come from. Many avoidants developed their need for independence as a form of protection. At some point in their life, they may have learned that relying on others wasn't safe, or that emotional needs wouldn't be met consistently. So they adapted by becoming self reliant and emotionally guarded. Recognizing this helps them realize that their reactions are not random, they are learned responses. And what is learned can also be unlearned, slowly and intentionally. Self awareness also helps avoidants separate past fears from present reality. Not every relationship will take away their freedom, and not every emotional moment is a threat. But until they become aware of their patterns, their mind may continue reacting as if it is. Another key step is learning to tolerate discomfort. For avoidance, emotional closeness can feel unfamiliar, and unfamiliar often feels uncomfortable. But discomfort does not always mean something is wrong. It can also mean something is new. Instead of immediately escaping that feeling, they can practice staying present just a little longer. For example, if they feel the urge to ignore a message, they might choose to respond instead. If they feel like ending a conversation, they might stay engaged for a few more minutes. These small moments matter. Growth doesn't happen through big, dramatic changes, but through consistent, small efforts. It's also important for avoidants to redefine what a healthy relationship actually means. Many of them unconsciously associate closeness with losing themselves. They may believe that being in a relationship means giving up independence, space, or control. But a healthy relationship doesn't take those things away, it balances them. Learning that they can be close to someone and still maintain their individuality is a major shift. It allows them to see relationships not as a threat, but as something that can add value to their life without taking anything away. Over time, as they build awareness and slowly challenge their preveach patterns, relationships start to feel less overwhelming and more manageable. And that's where real change begins. Another important step for avoidants to build healthy relationships is learning how to communicate openly, even when it feels uncomfortable. Avoidants often keep things inside. They may expect their partner to just understand their needs without clearly expressing them, or they may avoid conversations that feel too emotional or intense. But healthy relationships cannot survive on unspoken expectations. For many avoidants, communication feels risky because it involves vulnerability. Saying what they feel, what they need, or what's bothering them can make them feel exposed. So instead of speaking up, they stay quiet, change the topic, or slowly create distance. The problem is silence creates confusion. Their partner is left guessing what went wrong, while the avoidant is trying to manage everything internally. Over time, this gap can lead to misunderstandings, frustration, and emotional disconnection. To build a healthier relationship, avoidants need to practice putting their inner experience into words, even if it feels unnatural at first. It doesn't have to be deep or perfectly expressed. It can start small and simple. For example, instead of disappearing when overwhelmed, they can say, I'm feeling a bit overloaded right now. I just need some time. Instead of pulling away without explanation, they can say, I'm not upset with you. I just need space to recharge. These small statements create clarity and reduce anxiety for both sides. Another key part of communication is learning to stay present during uncomfortable conversations. Avoidants often shut down when emotions become intense. They may go quiet, avoid eye contact, give short responses, or mentally check out of the conversation. This happens because their system feels threatened, even if the situation is not actually dangerous. But avoiding these moments doesn't protect the relationship, it slowly weakens it. To grow, avoidants need to practice staying in the conversation just a little longer than they usually would. They don't need to be perfect or say the right thing every time. Even simple engagement, like listening carefully, asking a question, or acknowledging what the other person said, is progress. Over time, this helps them realize that emotional conversations are not something to fear. They can handle them step by step. Another important shift is learning to express boundaries clearly instead of creating distance silently. Avoidants are actually good at needing space, but they often communicate it in a way that feels like rejection, such as ignoring messages or disappearing. There's a big difference between silent distance and honest boundaries. Saying, I need some alone time today, is very different from going quiet without explanation. One builds trust, the other creates confusion. When avoidants communicate their boundaries openly, they don't lose independence. They gain respect and understanding. It's also important for avoidants to learn how to respond to their partner's emotions without feeling overwhelmed. Emotional expression from a partner can sometimes feel intense or confusing to them. They may not know what to say, so they either shut down or try to avoid the conversation entirely. But they don't need perfect responses. Simple validation can go a long way. Saying things like, I hear you, that makes sense, or I understand why you feel that way, helps their partner feel seen and supported. It also reduces pressure on the avoidant to fix the situation. Another key area is consistency. Healthy relationships are built on small, repeated actions over time. Avoidance may show up strongly in some moments, then disappear in others when things feel too intense. This inconsistency can make the relationship feel unstable. Learning to be a bit more steady, even in small ways, makes a big difference. Replying to messages, checking in occasionally, and following through on plans builds trust slowly. Consistency doesn't mean losing space. It just means showing that the connection is still there, even when they need time for themselves. Avoidants also need to understand that communication is not a threat to their independence. Many of them unconsciously believe that expressing feelings or needs will trap them or make them lose control. But in reality, clear communication gives them more control, not less. When they say what they need, they prevent misunderstandings. When they express boundaries, they protect their space in a healthy way. When they share emotions, they create stronger and more stable connections. Over time, as they practice these small steps, communication starts to feel less overwhelming. What once felt uncomfortable begins to feel normal and even safe. And this shift is what allows avoidance to move from distant and inconsistent patterns to more secure, balanced, and healthy relationships. Another important step for avoidance to build healthy relationships is learning how to stay emotionally present instead of escaping when things feel intense. One of the biggest patterns avoidants struggle with is emotional withdrawal. When conversations get deeper or feelings become stronger, their first instinct is often to shut down, distract themselves, or create distance. This reaction may feel automatic, but it can slowly damage connection over time. To build a healthier relationship, avoidants need to practice staying present in those moments, even if it feels uncomfortable. This doesn't mean forcing themselves to be overly emotional. It simply means not disappearing when emotions show up. For example, if a conversation starts to feel overwhelming, instead of completely shutting down, they can pause and say, I need a moment to process this, but I'm still here. This keeps the connection intact while still respecting their need for space. Learning to pause instead of escape is a powerful shift. Another key part of emotional presence is allowing themselves to feel without immediately trying to suppress or control it. Avoidants often try to minimize their emotions. They may tell themselves, it's not a big deal, or I don't need this, even when they actually care. Over time, this habit creates emotional distance, not just from others, but from themselves. To build a healthy relationship, they need to start acknowledging their feelings instead of dismissing them. Even recognizing something simple like, I feel a bit anxious right now, or I think I care more than I expected, can help them stay connected to their emotional experience. This awareness makes it easier to respond in a calm and thoughtful way instead of reacting by pulling away. Avoidants also benefit from slowing down their reactions. Their urge to withdraw often comes quickly, especially when they feel overwhelmed. But if they can pause before acting on that urge, they create space for a different choice. Instead of immediately ignoring a message, they can wait and respond later. Instead of canceling plans suddenly, they can communicate honestly. These small pauses break the automatic pattern of withdrawal. Another important aspect is learning that closeness and independence can exist together. Avoidants often feel like they have to choose one or the other. When they feel close to someone, they may believe they are losing their freedom. But in a healthy relationship, both can coexist. They can be connected while still having personal space. They can care about someone without losing their identity. Understanding this reduces the fear that drives them to withdraw. Avoidants should also practice being emotionally available in small, consistent ways. Emotional presence doesn't require big gestures. It can be as simple as listening attentively, responding thoughtfully, or staying engaged in a conversation. These small actions build trust and safety over time. Another challenge avoidants face is tolerating emotional discomfort from their partner. When their partner expresses feelings, especially negative ones, it can feel overwhelming or even threatening. Their instinct might be to shut down or avoid the situation, but instead of withdrawing, they can practice staying and listening without trying to escape. They don't need to fix everything. Just being there and not leaving the moment is often enough. Over time, this helps them realize that emotions, both theirs and their partners, are not something to fear. It's also important for avoidants to understand that emotional presence doesn't mean losing control. Many avoidants fear that if they allow emotions in, they will be consumed by them. But emotions don't take control. They pass, especially when they are acknowledged instead of avoided. The more they practice staying present, the more comfortable they become with emotional closeness. What once felt overwhelming starts to feel manageable. And slowly, their relationships begin to feel less like something they need to escape from, and more like something they can safely stay in. Another important step for avoidants to build healthy relationships is learning how to handle space in a balanced and healthy way. Avoidants naturally need more personal space than most people, and that's not a flaw. It's part of how they recharge and feel stable. The problem isn't the need for space, it's how that space is taken. Often, avoidants create space by disappearing, going silent, or emotionally shutting down without explanation. While this helps them feel better temporarily, it can create confusion and insecurity in the relationship. To build a healthier connection, they need to shift from silent distance to communicated space. Instead of pulling away without saying anything, they can express their need clearly. For example, saying, I need some time to myself today, or I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, I'll talk to you later, makes a huge difference. It allows them to have their space without damaging trust. This small change turns space into something safe instead of something hurtful. Another key part of this is understanding that needing space doesn't mean something is wrong. Avoidants often associate their need for distance with a problem in the relationship. But in reality, space can be healthy when it's used intentionally. When space is communicated, it becomes part of the relationship instead of a threat to it. Avoidants also need to learn how to come back after taking space. This is something many struggle with. They may take time alone, but then feel awkward or unsure about reconnecting. So they delay reaching out, which makes the distance longer than necessary. Healthy relationships require reconnection after distance. Even something simple like sending a message, restarting a conversation, or acknowledging the pause can rebuild connection quickly. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be intentional. Another important shift is learning not to use space as an escape from every uncomfortable feeling. While space is healthy, constantly using it to avoid emotional situations can prevent real growth. Avoidants can start asking themselves, do I need space right now or am I trying to avoid something? This question helps them use space more consciously instead of automatically. Sometimes, staying present in a slightly uncomfortable moment is more beneficial than stepping away. Avoidance should also work on creating a rhythm between connection and independence. Healthy relationships are not about being together all the time or being distant all the time. They are about balance. They can spend time connecting, then take space to recharge, and then return again. This natural flow helps them feel less overwhelmed while still maintaining closeness. Over time, this balance starts to feel more normal and less stressful. Another helpful practice is setting expectations around space with their partner. When both people understand each other's needs, there is less confusion. For example, agreeing on how long space might last or how to stay in touch during that time can reduce anxiety. This turns space into something predictable instead of uncertain. Avoidants also benefit from realizing that taking space does not mean disconnecting emotionally. They can still care, still be present, and still value the relationship, even when they are physically or mentally taking time for themselves. Learning this helps them stop seeing space and connection as opposites. Finally, they need to understand that healthy space strengthens relationships when it's handled properly. It prevents burnout, reduces overwhelm, and allows both people to come back with more clarity and energy. When avoidants learn to take space without disappearing and reconnect without hesitation, relationships start to feel safer, more stable, and easier to maintain. And this balance is a key part of building a truly healthy. Another important step for avoidants to build healthy relationships is learning how to trust, not just their partner, but also the relationship itself. Trust can be difficult for avoidants because they are used to relying on themselves. Letting someone else in, emotionally or mentally, can feel uncertain and risky. Because of this, they may keep a part of themselves guarded, even when things are going well. To build a healthy relationship, avoidants need to slowly allow themselves to trust that not every connection will hurt them or take away their independence. This doesn't happen instantly. It happens in small steps, through repeated positive experiences. For example, when their partner shows consistency, understanding, and respect for boundaries, avoidants can start noticing that. Instead of dismissing it or staying guarded, they can allow themselves to accept it. Trust grows when they stop expecting the worst and start allowing the possibility of something stable. Another important aspect of trust is letting go of the need to control everything. Avoidants often feel safer when they are in control of their emotions, their time, and the pace of the relationship. But relationships naturally involve some level of uncertainty. Trying to control everything can create distance instead of security. Learning to let things flow a little, without overanalyzing every step, helps them feel more relaxed in the connection. It allows the relationship to grow naturally instead of being constantly managed. Avoidants also need to trust themselves. Many of them doubt their ability to handle relationships. When things start getting serious, they may think, what if I mess this up? Or, what if I can't handle this? These thoughts can push them to withdraw before anything goes wrong. But building a healthy relationship requires believing that they are capable of growth. They may not have all the answers, but they can learn, adjust, and improve over time. Trusting themselves means giving themselves the chance to stay instead of leaving out of fear. Another key point is learning to trust emotional moments instead of fearing them. Avoidants often see emotions as something unpredictable or overwhelming, but emotions are a natural part of connection. They don't have to be controlled all the time. When avoidants allow themselves to experience emotions without immediately shutting them down, they begin to see that those moments pass and don't harm them. This reduces the fear that drives them to pull away. Avoidants should also work on trusting communication. Instead of assuming things will go wrong or that expectations will become too much, they can rely on open conversations to clarify what's actually happening. When both people communicate honestly, there is less need for guessing or overthinking. Another important shift is understanding that trust is built through consistency, not perfection. Avoidance may look for certainty before fully opening up, but relationships don't work that way. Trust develops over time through small, repeated actions. Showing up, being honest, respecting boundaries, and staying present, even when it's uncomfortable, slowly builds a strong foundation. Avoidants also need to accept that some level of vulnerability is necessary for trust. Without opening up even a little, it's hard for a real connection to grow. This doesn't mean sharing everything at once. It means allowing small moments of honesty, small pieces of emotion, and small acts of openness. Over time, these moments add up. As avoidants begin to trust more, both themselves and the relationship, they start feeling less need to withdraw. The connection feels less threatening and more stable. And slowly, relationships begin to feel like something they can rely on rather than something they need to protect themselves from. Another important step for avoidance to build healthy relationships is learning how to deal with conflict without running away from it. For many avoidants, conflict feels heavy, uncomfortable, and emotionally draining. Even small disagreements can feel bigger than they actually are, which is why their first instinct is often to shut down or create distance. They may go silent, avoid responding, or try to end the conversation quickly. In the moment, this helps them feel calm again. But over time, it creates unresolved issues and emotional distance in the relationship. To build a healthy connection, avoidants need to slowly change how they respond to these moments. Instead of escaping immediately, they can practice staying present just a little longer. They don't need to handle everything perfectly. Even listening without leaving the conversation is already a step forward. Another helpful shift is understanding that conflict doesn't always mean something is wrong. Disagreements are a normal part of any relationship. They don't automatically lead to rejection or loss. In fact, when handled calmly, they can bring more understanding between two people. Avoidants can also learn to slow themselves down during these moments. When they feel overwhelmed, their reaction is usually quick. But if they pause before acting on that feeling, they create space to respond in a better way. For example, instead of shutting down completely, they can say something simple like, I need a moment to think, or this feels a bit intense right now. These small responses keep the connection alive while still giving them room to breathe. It's also important for avoidants to understand that they don't have to fix everything at once. Sometimes the pressure to solve a problem immediately makes them want to escape even more. But it's okay to take a short break, as long as it's communicated. Taking space and then coming back shows effort and respect for the relationship. Another key step is learning to express their side, even in a simple way. Avoidants often stay quiet about their feelings, which can make their partner feel confused. Even small expressions like, I didn't mean it that way, or I felt a bit uncomfortable, can help bring clarity and reduce misunderstanding. Over time, as they practice staying present instead of withdrawing, conflict becomes less overwhelming. It starts to feel more manageable and less threatening. And slowly, they begin to see that they don't need to run away from difficult moments to feel safe. They can stay, communicate, and still protect their peace at the same time. Another crucial step for avoidance to build healthy relationships is learning how to be patient with themselves. Change doesn't happen overnight, and old patterns, like withdrawing when things get intense, can take time to unlearn. Avoidants often get frustrated with themselves when they notice these habits, but self criticism can actually make it harder to grow. Instead, they can practice self compassion, recognizing that discomfort is part of the process and that making mistakes doesn't mean failure, helps them stay motivated to improve. Even small successes, like staying present during an emotional conversation or expressing a need, should be acknowledged and celebrated. Another key step is understanding that emotional closeness is a skill, not a weakness. Avoidants may believe that needing someone or showing feelings makes them vulnerable in a negative way. But in reality, healthy intimacy strengthens connection and builds trust. Practicing emotional openness, even gradually, helps them develop this skill over time. Avoidants should also practice managing anxiety without shutting down. When feelings of overwhelm appear, they can use strategies like deep breathing, journaling, or taking short breaks to regulate themselves. The goal isn't to avoid emotions, but to process them in a way that allows them to stay present in the relationship. Another helpful practice is reflecting on their patterns. After interactions that feel intense or difficult, avoidants can ask themselves, did I withdraw? Why? Was it necessary? This kind of reflection increases self-awareness and reduces the likelihood of automatic reactions in the future. Avoidants also benefit from building mutual trust by being reliable and accountable. Following through on small commitments, keeping promises, and being consistent with communication strengthens the relationship and reduces fears of instability. It's also important for avoidants to embrace vulnerability gradually. They don't need to share everything at once. Sharing small feelings or thoughts consistently creates a sense of safety for both partners. Over time, it becomes easier to express deeper emotions without feeling exposed. Another key factor is learning to celebrate closeness instead of fearing it. Enjoying shared moments, expressing appreciation, and acknowledging positive experiences helps avoidants reframe intimacy as something rewarding rather than threatening. Over time, practicing patience, self compassion, and gradual emotional openness allows avoidants to break old patterns and engage more fully in relationships. The final step for avoidants to build healthy relationships is learning how to sustain connection while maintaining their individuality. One of the biggest fears for avoidants is losing themselves in a relationship or feeling trapped by emotional closeness. Healthy relationships, however, don't require sacrificing independence. They thrive on balance. Avoidance can create this balance by setting clear boundaries while still being emotionally present. Boundaries are not walls, they are guidelines that protect their space and energy, while also giving their partner clarity and security. For example, taking personal time, maintaining hobbies, or having alone time doesn't mean withdrawal. It's a healthy way to recharge while staying engaged. Another key part of sustaining connection is consistency. Avoidance can show up for their partner in small but meaningful ways, like responding to messages, checking in, or expressing appreciation. These consistent efforts build trust and stability over time, even if the gestures are simple. They should also embrace open communication as a lifelong practice. Expressing needs, discussing feelings, and resolving conflicts calmly become easier when done regularly rather than only in moments of crisis. This helps avoidants build confidence in their ability to handle emotional intimacy. Learning to manage discomfort is another essential factor. Emotional closeness may never feel completely natural at first, but tolerating small amounts of discomfort allows avoidants to grow. Each time they stay present instead of withdrawing, their nervous system slowly becomes more comfortable with intimacy. Avoidants also benefit from celebrating positive connection instead of only focusing on potential risks. Acknowledging moments of trust, warmth, and affection reinforces the idea that closeness can be safe and rewarding. Finally, avoidants should remember that building healthy relationships is an ongoing journey, not a destination. They may encounter setbacks or revert to old patterns occasionally, but with awareness, patience, and effort, they can create relationships that are both secure and fulfilling. By combining self awareness, communication, emotional presence, healthy boundaries, and trust, avoidants can learn not only to maintain connections, but to thrive in them. Over time, relationships stop feeling overwhelming or threatening and start feeling safe, stable, and deeply rewarding for both partners. This is the full guide to how avoidance can build healthy, balanced, and lasting relationships.